about this game right now over in Columbia? You're all over the map. Get it together right now. College game day.
I'm the AD guy.
Everybody knew that this was going to be college game day. Actually, Kurt Herbstreit was talking about we were supposed to go to Georgia, Kentucky, but then, of course, South Carolina destroyed Kentucky in Lexington. Monster game for that man, Brian Kelly, and monster game for Shane Beamer. Looking to go 3-0 would get them, I would imagine, ranked if they win this game. And this defense bothers the hell out of me as an LSU fan right now.
Peter Burns.
Yes,
this defense
Chris Doering.
is the best defense in the SEC right now. Man, you turn the tape on, which I know you did this week.
I did.
And you see guys flying around. You see dudes hitting. You see aggressiveness up front. I mean, with Stewart and Kennard, they may be the best bookend edge rushers in the conference right now. It's a fun defense to watch. And all of a sudden, Clayton White has some guys that are experienced and have a little continuity on that defense. It's just like what we talk about with Ole Miss. You bring the majority of the guys back, then you sprinkle in a couple newcomers, and it's a recipe for some success.
Kyle Kennard, of course, has been fantastic. And Dylan Stewart. Joey, I want to play this clip because when I was watching some film, now, of course, that film came from Twitter or X, but because there was this one play against Kentucky that I hadn't seen until this morning. Watch this, okay? He fights a triple team and still causes the incompletion. Run it one more time. Watch him on the edge. One guy, two guys, three guys, throws him out of the way and still, I mean, that is, like, if that happens to me on NCAA football, I'm throwing the controller. And that my God, a freshman.
Yeah,
that's
the thing about it is that we talked to some draft folks. Alyssa Lang's fiance, Trevor Sikkema, said, hey, this guy right now, let him go to the NFL. He's NFL ready with that body and the motor that he has. I obviously think that there's some tongue-in-cheek with that, but I do think you look at a guy that's disruptive and that much of a game wrecker, and then you pair him with a guy like Kyle Kennard on the other side. Like, name somebody in this conference that has a pair that's as good as those two guys.
I mean, it's 2 games. Okay, and with that being said, okay, I don't want to pour water on this, but you're not going to say it's Dallas Turner, Will Anderson, or anything like that yet. But does it have the shades of that? Does it have the shades of making Brian Kelly worried, Garrett Nussmeier, and this offensive line worried a little bit, who still have not given up a sack so far, but there is that's the reason why I think South Carolina has a chance in this game. I think after the Old Dominion game, none of us would have thought, even with the way LSU didn't play great against Southern Cal and they lose that game, you're still thinking, all right, it's going to be LSU. I mean, South Carolina hasn't won that game in Columbia since 1930, right? I mean, so to me, I look at this and I'm like, because of that 1-2 punch, there is an ample amount of fear right now.
This defense is more than just those two guys because I think they're playing really well as a unit, and that's certainly important. But I do think you mentioned earlier the idea that game day was supposed to go to Lexington for the Georgia-Kentucky game, and then Kentucky gets smashed by USC. Like, I don't remember a season where there's less that we know through 2 weeks. What you think you know and then what you actually know are two totally different things. And that has to do with even, with Texas A&M losing to Notre Dame. We felt like that was a good loss, and all of a sudden Notre Dame loses to NIU at home, and it looks like a terrible loss. So I'm hoping that we find out more about these teams this week, but I do still have concerns, despite what Coach Beamer said about the offensive line and all. I do have concerns about what they're able to do offensively as a group. And I think LSU, despite going up against a really good defense, they're going to get their points. I believe in Garrett Nussmeier. I believe in Kyron Lacey. The question I have, the matchup of the weekend across the SEC, is that LSU offensive line against this defensive front for South Carolina. Because there's a lot of LSU folks that I think are a little disappointed with this offensive line to this point. We've really hyped them up maybe as the best group in the conference coming in, and they had trouble in the first two ball games.
Because they can't run the ball. And I think the threat of last year having Jaden Daniels be able to pull the ball when they run those RPOs, then that was a threat. That's not something that Nussmeier is going to be able to do. So teams don't have that. Oh my goodness, what is Nussmeyer going to be able to bring with his legs? I think that
The
that makes me
Emory
understand.
injury too. I mean, you saw
Yeah.
Emory in the second half of that USC game kind
Ran
of looked
hard.
like, wow, we got a little compliment here to what Nussmeier's doing, throwing the ball, and then the injury, obviously takes him away. But I'm confident that they'll find somebody that can provide the complementary run aspect.
We'll see if that happens. Only 3.9 yards per rush right now for LSU. And of course, College Game Day. Don Staley going to be the guest picker there.
South Carolina surprised everybody, I think,
Yeah.
at Kentucky. The game at Kentucky was really, really impressive. And LSU is incredibly talented. I think LSU is a really good team that lost to another really good team in USC barely a few weeks ago. So that one has potential to be pretty good, though.
Deli, we were talking earlier about the maybe the best matchup within the matchup being there in Columbia, South Carolina, with the offensive line for LSU going up against that front for South Carolina that's been so disruptive. I know you're tied in with a lot of folks there in the state of Louisiana. Like there's a little bit of a feeling of nervousness, I think, as it relates to the offensive line specifically and the inability to run the ball last week against Nichols. Like what do you make of that matchup specifically, and how fearful are you that the offensive line maybe isn't living up to what the hype was in the preseason?
Yeah, they're one of the most experienced, I think, offensive lines in the country, and and they probably have a first round draft pick on that offensive line as well. And there was a thought that they would be able to move the football on the ground and push people around, and we haven't seen that. They struggled to run, like you said, against Nichols. They struggled to run the football. They certainly did against USC in the third quarter. Late in the third quarter, they picked up some bit on the ground and were able to move the football a little bit, but the running lanes weren't there that we've expected from LSU and from LSU's offensive line, and it's a little bit head scratching. And then they lost John Emery, the running back. Poor kid has been injury plagued and going to miss another season with a season-ending injury. So yeah, that's been interesting. Maybe they can find their way in South Carolina, but as you mentioned, the Gamecocks have been really good up front, and God really showed that at Kentucky, just completely shut them down.